Honorable Duale.
Honorable Speaker, as I rise to support the report of the Committee on Finance on the vetting of the nominee for the appointment to the office of the Auditor General in terms of Article 229 of the Constitution, allow me on the onset to congratulate the former Auditor General, Mr. Edward Ouko, for having served this nation for the past 8 years as Auditor General, in my opinion, extremely well in a very difficult circumstance. Mr. Speaker, the job of the Auditor General, and he was the first Auditor General under the new Constitution, is not an easy one. And looking at the functions of that office in line with Article 229 of the Constitution, it's a job that can be summed up being simply to audit the national executive, the county executive and the assembly, constitutional office holders or commissions, the judiciary and parliament, and to make sure that each and every money appropriated by parliament is accounted for and there is value for that money. The Speaker, on a very light note, someone once, Mr. Speaker, told me that if you are keen to notice the former Auditor General, Mr. Edward Ouko, usually used to keep his hair completely shaved. But it was not by choice. I'm told within a few months of him being in that office and taking over that office, his hair was falling very fast. And before I came this afternoon, I had to talk to, and the reason was because of the magnitude of the constitutional weight of that office. But before I came to this afternoon to this chamber, Mr. Speaker, I talked to a friend of his, and I'm told since he left office, his hair is growing back. So is mine as the former leader of majority. So sometimes you see your hair is falling very fast. Sometimes you see your hair turns gray very fast. Not because of something else, but because of the office. So I'm sure, I'm told, Honorable, the former Auditor General. And the Speaker, there are certain offices in this country, independent offices, the office of the DPP, the office of the Auditor General, the office of team and men and women who work at the EACC, the Inspector General of Police. Those are offices that, in one way or the other, they will make decisions that will not make everybody very happy. And they say to Mr. Speaker, that if you want to please everybody, then the best job for you is to sell ice cream. So Janet, you are lucky because we will not see how your hair will fall. Maybe you'll cover with a scarf. Honorable Janet Ogera, my very old friend, she served me very well when I was in ODM as our executive director. She's telling me I'm growing. Yes, because now I have time for my family and my children, and I sleep well. So Honorable Kimunya has made my life a bit easier, and I always pray for him. So, Mr. Speaker, Edward Ouko, and let's be very frank, Edward Ouko was a very good auditor. But Edward Ouko went through hell. He was even dragged to this parliament through a petition. But I'm sure when history will be written down, many of us even had issues with him. You remember the Eurobond. Edward Ouko was a man who had many issues, particularly with the Jubilee administration in which I am part of. But because of the nature of the office, just like that of the DPP and other independent offices, Edward Ouko or the Auditor General has to make one decision either way, and it will not impress everybody. So, Mr. Speaker, we want to thank him. And on moving today, after a long wait, we finally now have a new Auditor General. And I had a chance to look at the report of the Committee of Finance, and I must say that Madam Nancy is cut out for her job. Having worked at the office of the Auditor General in various positions, she doesn't only hold extensive knowledge of audit, but once appointed, she will require each and every person who works at the office of the Auditor General. And it is very, very true. There are 5 of her colleagues senior than her, senior deputy auditor generals who applied for the same job, but because of the Almighty God, she won that seat. So it's her responsibility now as a leader of the audit office. I can't hear what Honorable Junet is saying, the Speaker. Yeah, you know, Honorable Junet, the Almighty speaks to those who are in the panelist. Those of us who believe in God, he doesn't need to speak to, he speaks to those who are conducting the interview. He speaks to their heart. So they make you number one. But now, she must work with her former colleagues, her seniors, and she must have a teamwork. Because that office is very, very key. The Speaker, it's very important for this nation, and as members may be aware that there are so many audit reports that have been pending for being unsigned. You know, legally, just like the DPP and the Auditor General, it is a constitutional obligation that it's only them to sign. So if the office of the DPP becomes vacant, if the office of the Auditor General becomes vacant, then we have to wait. So we must amend the Audit Act, we must amend the Constitution, if that has to be, to make sure that we create a transitional mechanism that 6 months, 8 months to the exit of the Auditor General, because they have a tenure of office, that the recruitment process starts. Because Parliament cannot wait. It's very, very clear, Mr. Speaker, in the Constitution that within 6 months after the end of each financial year, the Auditor General shall audit and report in respect of the previous financial year. Even there's a timeline on how he's going to report to Parliament, to the National Assembly, for the national government, the judiciary and Parliament, and other institutions, and for the Senate in terms of the county. Janet is not getting this job because she's a woman. You know, there's a problem in this country, Mr. Speaker, that even when a woman, state or public officer is involved in corruption, the gender card is raised. But when they're getting jobs, we are appointing them, why is it that the gender card is not raised? Women steal the way men can steal. So when we are appointing Janet, we are not giving Janet because she's a woman. We expect Janet to comply with the provisions of the Constitution and become the best Auditor General after 8 years. And we expect that to profile the gender issue, that women can do better. But Mr. Speaker, we will not expect Janet to go and cover up for her colleagues in the other gender if they're involved. The Vice Chair was saying she's born in Kisumu. Unless you tell us whether he was sending a message. We know where Janet comes from. It's not in doubt. I was also born somewhere outside Northeastern. Honorable Junet was born in Mandera, but he's a member of parliament for Migori. So, but we wish Janet very well, and I hope, Mr. Speaker, the Public Accounts Committee and the Public Investment will now work efficiently to make sure that the pending issues are resolved. I beg to support.
Member for Suna East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this motion, Mr. Speaker. And the onset, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion. Mr. Speaker, this Office of the Auditor General is one of the most important offices in the structure of governance of our country, Mr. Speaker. And we have taken quite some time from the time the previous auditor retired and up to now, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is a reason why under the Constitution of 2010, Kenyans decided to make this office a constitutional office, an independent constitutional office, Mr. Speaker. As you remember very well, previously, it used to be called Controller and Auditor Office. But now, under the new Constitution, the two offices were separated. We had the Auditor General's Office, and we have the Controller of Budget Office, which were both made constitutional offices, Mr. Speaker. That tells you how important this office is, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that I have been raising and saying that if you want to fight corruption in this country, Mr. Speaker, you just need to look at the report of the Auditor General presented to Parliament, Mr. Speaker. As much as it has to go through a process in the Public Accounts Committee, but after it is processed through the Public Accounts Committee, that final report of the Public Accounts Committee, Mr. Speaker, gives the final verdict on the report of the Auditor General. And if that report of Public Accounts Committee was to be implemented successfully, Mr. Speaker, this country will have saved a lot of money, Mr. Speaker. The Auditor General that we had the last 8 years, Mr. Speaker, performed very well. He did a good job. He did a fantastic job. He stepped on many toes, Mr. Speaker, and people didn't feel good about what he was doing. But in the end, Mr. Speaker, he left office with his head high up, Mr. Speaker, because he has done his job in accordance with the Constitution and the law, Mr. Speaker. And I hope the new nominee, Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt, will follow suit and she will do a good job, because from the report of the committee, I am convinced that she is capable of doing a good job. She has the capacity and she has all the required qualifications for her to do a good job, Mr. Speaker, in that office. Mr. Speaker, what worries me a lot is these new constitutional offices that have been created by the Constitution, which we cannot say anymore the new Constitution because it is old. That's why we want even now to do amendments, because it has become old for 10 years. Mr. Speaker, when somebody is appointed to that office and he serves for 8 years, which is non-renewable, Mr. Speaker, where does that person go to? For example, today, you are appointed an Auditor General who is 45 years old, and you tell him to serve for 8 years, non-renewable. After that, where does he go? And somebody is supposed to retire at 60 years old. So, Mr. Speaker, it's very painful, because even under the retirement and benefits, there is no act that guarantees the Auditor General any benefits when he retires, Mr. Speaker. The old Auditor General who has retired has no benefits. He has no pension. He has nothing. I have met him severally, complaining to me. I have served the nation for 8 good years. I have done a good job. I have saved this country billions of shillings through my audit job. Mr. Speaker, after he has retired, he has no benefits at all. He has no pension. He has not been covered under any law on how he's going to retire. Now, if you are 45 years, as I said earlier, and you become an Auditor General, after 8 years you retire, you leave office. It's not renewable. What are you supposed to do, Mr. Speaker? To hang around here drinking in bars? Mr. Speaker, that matter must be addressed. I think it's an oversight that people didn't look at the beginning when the new Constitution took effect, Mr. Speaker. Every officer who has served this country, especially at the level of Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, who has stepped on many toes, Mr. Speaker, who has unearthed many scandals, who has saved this country a lot of money, must get a suitable retirement package, Mr. Speaker, at the end of his term. That is my plea, and this House must raise to that occasion, Mr. Speaker. Because even this lady now who has been given this job, after 8 years she's going to retire like the other one. Another one will come, another one will come. So are we going to have an auditor do for us a good job, save us a lot of money, then we just send him home with nothing, Mr. Speaker? Finally, Mr. Speaker, I have served in the Public Accounts Committee now for some time. Mr. Speaker, the audit, when the Auditor General's office was made a constitutional office, was given independence, Mr. Speaker, I can tell without the fear of contradiction that that office has done a fantastic job, Mr. Speaker. You may not agree with what he's saying, you may not agree with what he reports, but Mr. Speaker, it was my view that there is no need, even sometimes when we are passing the budget here, or the preparation, I feel sometimes that any ministry or any PS who has audit queries must not be given more money until he clarifies how that audit query happened, or is resolved, Mr. Speaker. Because you cannot keep on carrying audit queries from one year to another year and you keep on being given more money, Mr. Speaker. Ministries which have audit queries, for example, you'll find a ministry has been given a budget of 50 billion, and you'll see them having a query on an amount of 15 billion from their budget. And in this financial year, they appear in the budget receiving more money. That is bad accountability. The Auditor General that we have now, Mr. Speaker, looks at how you have applied the law on the use of the money, public funds. He looks at whether the law was followed. He also looks at whether there was value for money. If you look at the Auditor General's report before the Public Accounts Committee, some of the issues he raises is value for money, Mr. Speaker, which we never used to have. The Auditor General nowadays tells Parliament that this work was done, but there was no value for value for money for the public, Mr. Speaker. And PSS appear before the Public Accounts Committee to answer that query, Mr. Speaker. Value for money. So, Mr. Speaker, it is my humble opinion that we must strengthen this office as Parliament, because the Auditor General reports to Parliament. He does not report to any executive office. He directly reports to Parliament, he tables his report to Parliament, and even the auditors that audit the Auditor General's office are appointed by Parliament. That's how independent he is. He's accountable to the people who are elected by the people of the Republic of Kenya. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to say that I want to congratulate Janet for getting this job. I want to tell her that she's getting into an important office. Kenyans are looking up to her, Mr. Speaker. She must make sure that Kenyans get value for their money, because the amount of money, someone was saying that we have a budget of 3 trillion. And he's saying every year we lose a third. I don't know how that happens, but if that is true, she's the right person who can confirm whether that is true or not true, Mr. Speaker, because she's the Auditor General of the budget of 3 trillion every year, Mr. Speaker. Those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Member for Suba North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I also want to join the honorable members in supporting the nomination of Madam Nancy to this position. And Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that it's going to be a tough call for her filling in the shoes of Edward Ouko, who's done a very good job. But going by her CV, Mr. Speaker, I am very, very sure that she will do very well. I want to just say, Mr. Speaker, because a lot of accolades has been said her way, that there are certain pertinent issues that Honorable Mbadi has raised, which especially on equitable representation in the committees, and I think there was one of the things that we agreed in this Parliament, that so that we abide by the National Cohesion and Integration Act, that we need to look at the constitutional commissions in totality before we make a decision as to the issue of their skewed appointment or not. But I think this is a conversation that as a country we need to be talking about, because there's a little bit of disquiet about the issue of representation and on key jobs. We need to have the face of Kenya. But I didn't want to say it in relation to this, because most times people like using women as the low-hanging fruits. There have been very many men who have been appointed in different positions. I am waiting for the next skewed appointment that has to do with the men, and I will come out very strongly. But because this is a woman, I know Honorable Duale has told us when he was supporting this that we should not only look at a situation, the gender dynamics when it favors us, Mr. Speaker, but I think it's because it's only the wearer of the shoes who knows where it pinches. I am in a group of women, I think it's an online group called African Leading Ladies or something like that. And Mr. Speaker, if you actually see the CVs of the women in that group, there are women from charcoal sellers to professors. They are experts in their own respective fields. But when you actually look at the way appointments are made, it does not represent the number of women and the skills that you are seeing in that group. And this is just a very small internet group. So I'm just wondering how many more women are out there with these amazing skills that we are not recognizing. And that is why whenever we see a situation where a woman has been recognized like Nancy has, then those of us who are pushing the gender agenda are very happy. Because, Mr. Speaker, a lot of times we are being told that the Constitution now provides an equal framework. It provides an equal legal framework, but in practice, a lot of people have not internalized that we need to follow the spirit and the letter of the Constitution in appointment, especially in other appointed or appointive positions. I know when the president was doing the cabinet appointments, especially the first time, he did very well. And when he was doing the PSS, he did fairly well, not as well as he should, because we were hoping to reach the 1/3 rule. But we have not. So increasingly, when you are seeing more women occupying positions like this, and I want to really congratulate Nancy, because she's the first woman to occupy this position. And Mr. Speaker, I know because she's the first one, again, the burden that will be placed before her will be much higher. The expectation will be much higher. So I just want to encourage her that, noting that people will be looking at you from a gendered lens. We know Edward Ouko did very well, but people will not only look at you because Edward did well. They will try and see whether a woman performed equally as well as a man. So I want to encourage you to follow the Leadership and Integrity Act and make sure that you do not fear, but you do your work well. I am only hoping that as Parliament, that we do, and I'm encouraging the Leader of Majority, the way he has said that he's going to bring amendments to the relevant bill so that the transition is easier in future, so that we don't have a situation in future where we have to wait this long. But I would also want to encourage that as Parliament, we put a little bit more budgetary allocation so that the office is not overwhelmed. Sometimes when the Office of the Auditor General comes to audit in our constituencies, you can see that they're actually overwhelmed. I'll give an example that one time, our constituencies, and we know that MPs now don't actually have the mandate to do roads. But because of the challenges we face, sometimes we are forced to do access roads to schools or to security installations. And Mr. Speaker, we actually did one such road. And after we did it, the Office of the Auditor General came and spoke to the chief, who had no clue who has done the road. And the chief said, I think it is the county. What did the Office of the Auditor General do without even verifying? Indicate that the CDF has withdrawn money to do a road which was done by the county. Yet, Mr. Speaker, I think it's an open secret who is likely to have done that road if you just ask at random anybody? Who is likely, if you go and say this road was done, who is likely to have done it, whether it's CDF or the county? I mean, these are the things which in law we call res ipsa loquitur, not by design, but by the nature of the fact that our counties are still, struggling with the systems and things like that. And because of that, sometimes, even very well-meaning governors are duped because the systems and structures that you have in CDF are still not available for the county governments. Very recently, Mr. Speaker, I chanced upon a situation where our CDF had done a health facility when we were allowed to, but when we transitioned with the new constitution, we actually handed over the facilities to the county. But most of them we handed over when they were complete. And then I am told the county government gave a lot of money, and they were making it as though they are starting afresh. So it would look like CDF has actually contributed 100,000 for a building that we have actually almost completed, and the only thing that needed to be done was probably painting. And, and yet now when the Auditor General comes, depending on who they find, they will be told CDF didn't do it, and then you will make it an audit query for CDF. And I think that is that area of tension the Auditor General's office must see how to deal with, so that we are not relying on one person or two people to make a decision, especially when we know that now we have different layers of project implementation from national government to county governments. And Mr. Speaker, I think in concluding, I just want to say also that I want to thank Mzalendo for acknowledging the work that I've done in this parliament. But I know Mzalendo has acknowledged many people before. Oh, congratulations. My brother was number 2. Mr. Speaker, I think some people were asking, I know there was somebody who did an analysis that member questioned because it was more subjective. But when Mzalendo goes into the Hansard to find out whether you contribute or not, it cannot be subjective. Anybody in doubt can also go to the Hansard and confirm. But that is not my concern or my worry. There are members who may speak twice or 3 times, but they speak a lot of substance. My concern, Mr. Speaker, is the number of people who are educated, some members of the public who are educated, who are very ignorant about the operations of Parliament. That you find somebody asking you why you speak in Parliament. They expect her to come and dance in Parliament. We are elected to come into Parliament to speak and represent our people and represent the concerns of our people. Like now I'm representing the women of this country when I'm speaking strongly to the issue of appointment of Nancy and urging the government to appoint more women. You expect me to speak that in your house or where? That is why I was elected #1, legislation. And I am very proud that I'm doing my work, and I'm doing it excellent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.